We're coming up on a decade since Obama welcomed same-sex marriage into the free land of America. And as it's become law, we are slowly desensitized to its normalcy. But what's God thinking a decade later? Are we even allowed to venture that far in our theology? Well, it's an interesting thing that I've pondered recently that most of us would agree that the majority opinion doesn't always equate to truth. Like, sometimes the majority is right, but truth can transcend a popular vote, whether that's a kindergarten class coming together, agreeing that the moon is scientifically made of cheese, or the 20th century atheist Germans coming together and agreeing that Jews deserve obliteration. Concerning homosexual marriage, which isn't even a real thing, and I'll get to that in a moment, let's say every US citizen, and suddenly, even every true Christian suddenly agreed that 2 men or 3 men or 15 women could suddenly marry each other. Everyone agreed about this in perfect global unity, and it became the norm for the next century. Would God still deny it? Yes. And I realize that's offensive, and it's haunting, and it's also freeing, y'all. Like, God, who is truth, Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. Truth, like, God is above us, and he can't be molded into our image. His truths are not like comets in the sky. They're here and then gone. His decrees can be eclipsed. You know, like the sun can be eclipsed by churches, by governments, by individuals. And things can therefore get dark, but the darkness will dissipate. And just because the darkness comes from an eclipse doesn't mean that light suddenly doesn't exist. Truth will come out in time. Truth always wins. Now, back to marriage. Many don't realize how central marriage is to the Bible, to Christianity. And therefore, let's go upstream from the Bible and Christianity, central to God's own heart. God denies homosexual marriage because he created marriage, like what it is. Marriage is not a car. Marriage isn't a sibling relationship. It's not the color purple. Marriage isn't how we describe a mother's love for her infant daughter. Marriage is something. It isn't 2 women in a covenant. It's something. It's one thing. It is a covenant relationship between 1 man and 1 woman who aren't related. These other things exist and they're great and we have names for them, but we can't extract the name of marriage from what it is and duct tape it onto whatever the heck we want. Now, we can do that, but that doesn't mean God is suddenly in agreement with what we're doing. I think we need a bigger picture of God and a bigger picture of marriage. Listen, what came before cities and nations and laws and governments and schools and universities and libraries and even churches was marriage. Think about that for a second. It's actually profound. The first establishment God ever created was marriage. He made the heavens and the earth, the various plants, animals, galaxies, and then he made Adam and then Eve, and then he immediately marries them in Genesis 2, verse 25. Marriage is the foundation of all society. It is the foundation of how humans work. Everything in society comes down to the family, and I know that's a hot take in this cultural moment, and the marriage is core to any family. But wait, there's more. We learn as Jesus leaves the throne of heaven for a feeding trough in a manger in a Rome-occupied Bethlehem 2 millennia back to rescue sinners, that he came to establish what? With what? He came to establish the church, his what? His bride. With what? The gospel. The church is the picture of what? The gospel. Marriage in the gospel, God's gracious relationship with his church, is what marriage points to and has pointed to all along. The relationship between Jesus and the church is explained as marriage. And so warp with me for a second to Ephesians chapter 5, verses 25 to 33. Let's go to the Bible laboratory. Okay, well, welcome to Ephesians 5, 25 to, I believe, 33. If you've been to a wedding, then you've heard this passage. Obviously, if you're a student of the Bible, this is hopefully familiar to you. But I'm going to read it real quick and just focus on something maybe we haven't focused on before. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And we know that, but maybe we got to think about that. This is earthly marriage is being compared to and points to Christ and the church. And then husbands, or love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her that he might sanctify her. That's a role of the husband to the wife based on what Jesus has done for us, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself. We're talking about marriage here. No, we're talking about Jesus's work with us, his bride, the church. He cleanses us with the word to present us to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes, cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, hold fast to his wife. The two shall become one flesh. So much here as we think back to Genesis. But this mystery is profound. The mystery of what? The mystery of marriage. And I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. The relationship of husbands and wives in this covenantal relationship is a mystery in how it also refers to Christ and the church. However, let each of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Okay, so I just wanted to riff on that for a second. Let's go back home. Okay, so last thing before my conclusion, we know that the Bible begins in marriage, and we know now perhaps that the gospel and God's relationship with his church is pictured by marriage. Let's look to how the Bible ends. What begins the new heavens and the new earth in the future? We can look to Revelation 19 and we read about the marriage supper of the Lamb, where the bride of Christ, the church, will undeservingly gather around a table and feast in heaven alongside and served by Jesus, the bridegroom. The point here is that marriage is not some secondary entity that God has allowed humans to remake like Play-Doh. Marriage is the bookends of the Bible, and it is filled everywhere in between with the gospel, which is portrayed and symbolized by marriage. Marriage fills with joy the heart of God, and to alter it is to therefore alter the gospel itself, and it is to anger God. In a godless age, people are going to do whatever they want, fine. In a world held hostage by Satan, people are going to do whatever they want, fine. But let's not pretend that God has slowly changed his mind as this issue has become more normalized in our land. On this issue, as Christians, what's our call? Well, maybe that's a video for another time, but we keep on living as salt and as light. We can't change the world in this macro sense. That is Jesus's role. We are aliens here. We are pilgrims, sojourners. We are the little people. We agape love those nearest us. We guard the good deposit unto death, and we make our marriages brighter and lovelier than anything the world has ever seen. That's how we win. Go love your wife. Go love your husband. Go prepare yourself in godliness to one day do that. And if you are called to singleness, then you devote yourself to the local church, to the bride. We all must do this. This is how the world is won. Watch one of these videos. See ya.